This video is sponsored by Call of Duty.
Hello, and today we're working with Call of Duty to celebrate Season 2 of Modern Warfare Warzone 2.0 and the brand new map Ashika Island. This will become the new drop zone for Resurgence. What they've asked us to do is to take the design of Ashika Island and incorporate it into a one-of-a-kind, unique samurai sword. This means we have a lot to play with in the design. We'll incorporate some cherry blossoms, which are a traditional motif in Japanese art, as well as recapitulate some action-packed gunplay that Call of Duty is famous for. The most appropriate material for a Japanese sword is tamahagani. It's a very early form of steel, and its beauty is that it transports the craftsman into the past and allows him to follow the footsteps of the masters before. The first stage to making a Japanese sword is to heat up the tamahagani, flatten it out, quench it and break it. That allows the craftsman to sort the steel by its carbon content based on the way it breaks. I've chosen to study the craft of the Japanese sword not only because I'm a scholar of art and art history, but also Japanese swordsmithing is a natural experiment in the preservation of techniques that used to be ubiquitous throughout the world. And seeing them firsthand and being able to practice them is truly a treasure. When working with a porous material like tamahagani or bloomery steel, the most appropriate heating medium is charcoal. Unlike coal, which contains a lot of sulfur and phosphorus, or gas, which creates a lot of water upon burning, charcoal burns clean and does not imbue the material with any extra elements. One of the most mythologized parts of making the Japanese sword is the folding of the steel. That process is necessary to make something that is porous and contains slag into something that is very homogeneous and solid. When folding, it is necessary to not only stretch and fold in this direction, but change up the folding pattern to stretch it out sideways. That way your grain structure is fairly uniform. So at this point, I'm finally arriving at the stage of the process where I'm setting up the hada and the features of the blade. In order to do that, I have to do a very sneaky but traditional thing that is commonly found in Shinto and Shin-Shinto swords. This is the billet you saw me stack on camera and fold. Off camera, I created another billet from slightly lower carbon to mahogany and added pieces of broken blades to it. More pieces of broken blades or material that I could not use in a complete piece, and folded it more, resulting in a billet that has a different carbon content and slightly different chemistry than the original one. From here on, I'm working with the final steel and going to be setting up my jigani and jihada. To do that, I will have to take this original billet, stretch it out, and cut it up, and stack it in much the same way we're doing with Damascus in modern times in order to create a pattern. From here on, there's no room for mistake, and any bubble or impurity will be reflected in the final piece.
Now that the sword is starting to take shape, why don't you just take a quick second and like this video? It really helps us out.
The bar of metal, which will eventually become the sword, is now established. Now it's time to cut off the tip and forge it over. That part of the process is necessary because the person who will appreciate the sword will be able to follow the grain all the way along the tip. If you just simply forge the tip flat, like modern smiths do, the grain will not follow the beautiful geometry of the kisaki. When making a Japanese blade, it's important to forge every single element of the future geometry by hand. That means I start out with the muni or the spine and move on all the way until I finish with the edge and the tip. The smith is supposed to forge out the katana blade 90% to shape. That way, at the end of forging, all it takes is a file and a scraper to prepare the blade for heat treating. One of, if not the most recognizable features of the Japanese sword is the differential heat treating that is presented in the form of the hamon. That type of heat treating combines the ductile spine with a very hard edge, and in Japan has been brought to a level of high art. My vision for this blade is in the tradition of Shinto bombastic style. So when I apply the clay, I go for large choji pattern. As the blade is plunged into the water, you can see it curving downward. That is because the thinner edge cools off much faster than the spine. But as the blade continues to cool off in water, the edge starts curving back up as the spine cools off. As a result, the edge becomes a little bit longer than the spine. That is because the harder steel increases in volume just slightly enough compared to the softer steel.
With the blade now hard, the long road of polishing now begins.
After heat treating, it's most common practice for the smith to give the blade to a professional polisher. And in most cases, the smith is not the person who's doing the polishing. However, every smith is trained how to do the polishing. And it is precisely the polishing process that separates Japanese swords from any other swords across the world, because the polish reveals what's in the steel. It does not etch out the pattern, it cleans it and purifies it. It is in fact within tradition that the polisher acts as a sort of a Shinto priest conducting an ablution or purifying ceremony on a sword. Some of the more superstitious sword owners sometimes would go to a sword polisher and saying, "Hey, my mom is sick, there's something going on with the stock market, I think it's this ancestral sword that needs to be polished to appease the kami or the family gods." In any blade, whether it's a knife, dagger, or a sword, Western or Eastern, the shoulder is one of the key points that is prone to stress and can break. Now, in the West, the guard butts up straight to the shoulder, and the problem with that construction is that if the guard is hit, there's a little bit too much stress and rocking motion imparted on the shoulder. In Japan, a solution to this problem has been perfected. A piece of the koshirai fittings called the habaki rests between the shoulder and the guard, the tsuba. So when the tsuba is hit, the softer material of the habaki absorbs some of the stress and does not impart it onto the blade. Now, sure, during use, the habaki deforms and the guard loosens up, but that can be fixed with adding a washer called a seppa, and it will tighten up the sword. The habaki itself, if you're making it, is one of the most annoying things to make for several reasons. In our case, Call of Duty asked us to incorporate some of the game designs into this piece, so my job is further complicated because I have to make a two-piece habaki, that is, the two parts of the habaki fit together like Lego blocks. The base of the habaki will have two fine silver cheeks that incorporate the Modern Warfare logo.
Katana builds such as this one take over a month to complete, and quite some time after that to process the footage and get the video edited. If you appreciate this high level of effort from our team here at That Works, be sure to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to like the video.
You've just seen an AK mag go into a white-hot forge. Let me tell you why. Well, the blade of the sword is made from traditional materials using traditional methods. We decided to incorporate more of the modern warfare into the rest of the piece. So we're gonna do something we have never tried before, but I'm pretty certain it would work. We took some random gun parts and 2 magazines from the 2 of the most prolific firearms you would find in modern warfare, the AK and the AR. We used the magazines as if they were a can and set them up for a can weld, filling them up with the gun parts we mentioned previously. This should work, and if it does, we're going to make the material for the fittings of our katana. Well, it did work. Well, the AK magazine worked a little bit better because it's a better designed magazine overall. So now we're going to stack the 2 billets together and make the material for the tsuba, fushi, and kashira. Now the material to make the tsuba is separated and ready. First I grind out the rough outline of the tsuba and then move to my jewelry shop and start piercing it. Here the design of the map of Ashika Island starts being visible. I will further incorporate the cherry blossom motif. Now, to the modern audience in the West, the flowers symbolize something happy. However, the enjoyment of the cherry blossom in Japan is actually rather sad because it deals with the ephemeral nature of beauty. Something that is present and gives you joy in one moment will pass away and vanish and never return in its original form again. Now that the silver is set in place, it's time to add the details. The goal of pursuing an ancient high art is not to make an object that is perfect to others, but rather it's the pursuit of one's own inner perfection. This idea harkens back to the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch. The body has no tree, the mirror has no stand. How can there be dust? It's the inner perfection of the craftsman that is released through hard labor. The labor doesn't make the craftsman perfect, but rather removes everything that was extraneous and outside of the process. The rest of the material made from gun parts is stretched out into sheet metal. And then, using the process called extrusion, I make the fushi and kashira. Mind you, I'm quite certain that extrusion is not the right process to make those pieces. Because the tsuba, the fushi and the kashira are all one set, I have to carry over the design from the tsuba onto the other two pieces, incorporating the cherry blossom, the textures, and the other design elements. To show a modern modification to the traditional elements, the tsuba, fushi, and kashira will also be etched to show the material from which it is made. The decorative design elements that are found under the ito wrap in the Japanese sword are called menuki. Now, contrary to what someone might believe, they are never cast when they are authentic. Instead, they're made in the process called uchidashi, which is very similar to the chasing repoussé with one big difference. In chasing repoussé, you work from the front and the back of your sheet metal. In uchidashi, you only work from the front. The advantage of only working from the front is that you're using pitch as basically a raising stake, thereby thickening your material as you're gaining height rather than thinning it out. Uchidashi overall is a more versatile technique due to the effect of thickening, because you're building up your mound and have virtually unlimited possibilities in the final form that you can achieve. Because the base material for my menuki is copper, and cherry blossoms are rarely copper colored, they're more often either pink or white, I have to inlay the silver as my flowers into the sheet metal. Now, if I were using chasing repoussé, this technique would have produced 80% failure, but because I employed uchidashi and thickened my copper, I can proceed inlaying without any worry. After the sword is complete, it is now appropriate to sign the tang. The signatures on Japanese swords are found exactly on the tang, which is the most tactile part of the entire blade, since the rest you're not supposed to touch with your hands. The signature incorporates calligraphy, which is unique to every single smith. It is often dated and dedicated to the person who originally commissioned the piece. One of the key elements to a katana is actually its scabbard. It is intrinsic in how katana martial arts are practiced. However, we already shown you how saya are made, and we're not going to focus much on that, except for the fact that this little piece you see right here, the koeguchi mouth opening, is one of the most annoying parts about making a scabbard. One little slip up on this paper-thin piece of wood, and I have to start over scrapping all the work that I did before. Yet another distinguishing feature of a Japanese sword is its unique handle wrap, which originally was developed to prevent slippage from wet, sweaty, or bloody hands on the battlefield. With all the elements complete and assembled, it is my honor to present to you the commemorative Call of Duty Season 2 Katana. Enjoy!
Be sure to click the link in the description below to learn more about Warzone 2.0 Season 2 today. And if you're watching this the day of its release, then I'm live streaming some Call of Duty action right now on my Twitch. Stop by and say hey.